Can you break free from the invisible chains that control your every move? Every single day you wake up thinking you're making conscious choices. You reach for your phone. You scroll through social media, react to messages, follow the same routines, and you believe that you're in control. But what if most of your life is actually happening on autopilot? What if the person that you think you are is really just a collection of automatic habits and reactions that you've never truly examined? This isn't new age fantasy or some kind of self-help nonsense. This is what neuroscience is telling us today, and it's what George Gurdjieff discovered over a century ago. These modern neuroscientists are now proving that he was absolutely right. I'm Mark Roach. Welcome to Transcendent, my platform to help you be authentic and, if you like, to find your uniqueness and your essence. Beware, my perspective may be uncomfortable. It was formed from a twisted journey around the world, crossing a wide spectrum of experiences. But it began in modest surroundings. It began from humble beginnings raised in the Ozarks by hardworking parents and grandparents with a touch of Native American heritage, coupled with a deep, heartfelt view of our fellow man. Yes, I was aspiring in my youth, and I had highs and lows throughout my life, as most people would define those highs and lows. But this channel is all about inspiring common people to find their power and place their uniqueness in their lives. My life has been a research lab, and I've studied mystics and healers, started a couple of oil companies, and walked away from a path to the NFL when I realized I couldn't conform to a materialistic and violent lifestyle. I've raised 8 kids and well over $1 billion for startups, and been in the middle of $10 billion of transactions, led 5,000 to 10,000 professionals in geology and engineering. Been mentored in business and athletics by the rich and famous. So my point here is I've been relatively successful or had the aptitude to succeed in the world, but my calling is elsewhere. And I'm here, I'm hoping to ease the way for others who also deal with complex PTSD like I have in my life and are looking for a calling or to a journey, inside their inner life to uncover why they're here and maybe pursue some unique potentials that we have, or you have, or I have. Or maybe you've got a friend who's on that path and you're trying to understand them. So let's look at the first teaching that Gurdjieff had in Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson. The first teaching, arousing of thought. Well, Gurdjieff began his masterwork with a shocking declaration. He said that modern people have become mechanized to receive impressions without individual effort. So, we think we're thinking, but we're actually just recycling old patterns. He identified 3 fundamental problems with how we approach life and consciousness. First, we follow what everyone else does instead of discovering our own authentic path. His grandmother told him on her deathbed, in life, never do as others do. Either do nothing, just go to school, or do something nobody else does. This wasn't rebellion for its own sake. This was a recognition that true understanding requires individual effort, not mass conformity. Second, conventional language fails to transmit genuine knowledge. Words mean different things to different people based on their experiences, backgrounds, and conditioning. What you understand when I say freedom or love or success might be completely different from what I mean. This is why real transformation requires what Gurdjieff called perception by not less than 2 centers, not just intellectual understanding. Third, most people live in what he called waking consciousness, which is really a form of sleep. We go through our days responding automatically to familiar triggers. We think that we're awake because our eyes are open and we're moving around, but our deeper faculties of awareness remain dormant. Gurdjieff illustrated this with a story about a Kurdish man who bought beautiful red peppers thinking they were sweet fruit. Even though they burned his mouth terribly, he kept eating them because he had paid for them, declaring, "Even if my soul departs from my body, I will go on eating." This perfectly describes how humans persist in harmful patterns simply because of investment, what modern psychology calls the sunk cost fallacy. Today, we see this everywhere. People stay in jobs that crush their spirits because they've already invested years. They maintain relationships that drain their energy because they've already put in so much effort. They continue consuming news and social media that makes them anxious and angry because they've gotten addicted to the stimulation. The Kurdish pepper eater lives in all of us. Now, the second teaching, learning through exile, is actually the second chapter of Beelzebub's tales to his grandson. Let me summarize that here. So in the second part of this tale, Gurdjieff tells us about Beelzebub, a cosmic being who was exiled from the center of the universe because of his youthful arrogance. In his youth, Beelzebub served at the Sun Absolute, the center of existence. But due to his unformed reason and impetuous thinking, he perceived something in the cosmic government that seemed wrong to him. Instead of questioning his own understanding, he gathered supporters and interfered in the affairs beyond his comprehension. The cosmic rebellion forced the ultimate authority to banish Beelzebub and his followers to our remote solar system. But here's the remarkable part. The exile, which seemed like punishment and failure, became the source of Beelzebub's greatest wisdom. During his long years on Mars, he established an observatory and studied the conditions of existence throughout the universe. His forced separation from the center allowed him to develop a broader, deeper understanding than he ever could have gained while in his comfortable, or in that original position. Through his service to a divine messenger sent to Earth, Beelzebub eventually earned his pardon and the right to return. But the being who returned was fundamentally transformed. The long years spent in unaccustomed conditions had broadened and deepened his knowledge and existence. His apparent failure had become the foundation of his authority as a teacher. This pattern appears constantly in our modern world, the entrepreneur who learns more from their failed startups than their successful one. The person who discovers their true calling after being laid off from a job they thought they wanted. The individual who finds their deepest strength while recovering from addiction, illness, or trauma. Sometimes what looks like exile or failure is actually the beginning of real development. Think about your own life. What experiences that seem like setbacks at the time actually taught you the most important lesson? What periods of difficulty or isolation led to your greatest growth? Gurdjieff understood that consciousness often develops through conscious suffering. Through willingly embracing the discomfort of seeing yourself and your situation clearly, the modern world tries to avoid all discomfort, all challenge, all friction. We medicate anxiety instead of investigating what it might be telling us. We distract ourselves from boredom instead of discovering what might emerge from stillness. We avoid difficult conversations instead of learning to communicate authentically. But growth requires friction. Muscles develop through resistance. Character develops through challenge. Sometimes character is discovered through challenge. Consciousness develops through the willingness to face what is uncomfortable. Now, the third teaching is working with universal forces. The third chapter presents a seemingly simple situation that reveals profound principles about how to live wisely. Beelzebub's spaceship encounters an obstacle, a comet called the Madcap. As this is passed through their intended route, leaving behind toxic gases that would damage any ship trying to pass through too quickly. The captain presents two bad options: take a long detour or wait for the gases to disperse naturally. Beelzebub's response reveals the wisdom of working with universal forces rather than fighting them. He quotes an earlier sage named Mullah Nasir Eddin. You can't jump over your knees, and it's absurd to try to kiss your own elbow. When faced with forces immeasurably greater than your own, submission isn't weakness, it's intelligence. Beelzebub advises waiting rather than attempting the risky detour. He prioritizes the long-term integrity of their vessel over the short-term convenience. This demonstrates the principle of considering ultimate consequences rather than immediate gratification. But here's where the story becomes really interesting. When the captain leaves to implement this decision, Beelzebub's grandson, Hassin, burst into joyful dancing, excited about the delay. The old servant, Ahun, scolds the boy for being selfish. But Hussein defends himself with sophisticated reasoning. He argues that his joy doesn't come from the mishap itself, but from the gratitude for the unexpected opportunity it provides to hear more of his grandfather's teachings. This exchange reveals something crucial about attitude and opportunity. The same situation that could be seen as frustrating delay becomes, through the right perspective, a gift. The obstacle becomes the path. The problem becomes the solution. Our hyper-connected, always rushing modern world that we've lost in this modern world, we've lost this wisdom. Every delay is seen as an inconvenience. Every obstacle is viewed as something to overcome or go around. Every moment of waiting is filled with anxiety or distraction. But what if delays and obstacles are actually invitations to develop patience, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of how things actually work? Consider how this applies to your daily life. When you're stuck in traffic, instead of fuming about the delay, what if you use the time of self-observation or genuine reflection? When a project at work hits an unexpected snag, instead of just pushing harder, what if you step back to see what the obstacle might be about revealing, or it might be revealing about your approach? When a relationship encounters difficulty, instead of just trying to get back to how things were, what if you explored what the challenge might be trying to teach both of you? So let's bring it all together, these first three chapters of Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson. It's the human condition today. These three teachings from Gurdjieff's opening chapters reveal something profound about human potential and why so few people actualize it. You know, we have the same three-centered nature as conscious beings throughout the universe. We have an emotional center that can feel deeply, a thinking center that can understand truly, and a physical center that can act effectively. We even have the potential for what Gurdjieff called higher being bodies, the development of a soul or access to soul or spirit. But there's a critical problem. As Beelzebub observes, Earth's beings' reason has become unique and utterly bizarre due to gradual degeneration. We've developed in ways that are very, very strange and peculiar in the highest degree. We have the potential for consciousness, but we become trapped in mechanical patterns that prevent its development. Modern life amplifies this problem exponentially. We're bombarded with information, but develop little wisdom. We're constantly stimulated, but rarely truly awake. We have access to more knowledge than any generation in history, but we often use it mechanically, defensively, to reinforce existing beliefs rather than to genuinely understand. Social media algorithms exploit our mechanical nature, keeping us scrolling through content that triggers automatic emotional reactions without engaging our deeper intelligence. News media keeps us in constant states of outrage or fear, preventing the calm reflection necessary for real understanding. Consumer culture convinces us that happiness lies in accumulating objects or experiences, keeping us externally focused instead of developing inner richness. Political discourse has become purely tribal, with people defending positions they've never consciously examined simply because those positions align with their group identity. Educational systems focus on information transfer rather than developing the capacity for genuine thinking. Even spiritual and self-help movements often become mechanical, with people collecting techniques and concepts without doing the real work of self-development and conscious development. But the same technology and social systems that can trap us in mechanical patterns also offer unprecedented opportunities for conscious development. We have access to wisdom traditions from around the world. We can connect with others committed to genuine growth. We can use apps and devices to support attention training and self-awareness practices. The question isn't whether the tools exist. The question is whether you're willing to use them consciously rather than mechanically. Are you willing to examine your own automatic patterns instead of just criticizing others? Are you willing to embrace the discomfort of seeing yourself clearly instead of maintaining comfortable illusions? Are you willing to work with the obstacles and the delays in your life instead of just trying to overcome or avoid them? Most importantly, are you willing to stop doing what everyone else does and discover your own authentic path? This doesn't mean being different for its own sake. It means developing the inner discrimination to recognize what genuinely serves your development versus what just satisfies your mechanical habits. Let's talk about the practice of conscious living. Start with simple self-observation. Through your day, notice when you're operating mechanically versus when you're genuinely present. Notice when your emotional center is driving your actions, when your thinking center is stuck in repetitive loops, or when your physical center is tense and restless for no reason. Practice what Gurdjieff called divided attention. When you're doing any activity, maintain awareness both of the task and of yourself as one doing the task. When you're walking, feel your feet on the ground while being conscious of yourself as the walker. When you're listening to someone speak, hear their words while being aware of yourself as the listener. Learn to work with the obstacles rather than just trying to overcome them. When you encounter delays, difficulties, or unexpected challenges, pause and ask what this circumstance might be revealing about your approach, your assumptions, or your real priorities. Instead of immediately reacting with frustration, explore what the situation might be trying to teach you. Develop what Beelzebub demonstrated, the wisdom to submit to forces greater than yourself while taking full responsibility for your own inner development. You can't control the economy, the political system, or other people's choices or random events, but you can control your own attention, your own reactions, your own inner work. Find others who are genuinely committed to conscious development, not just talking about it, but actually practicing self-observation and inner work. Human beings are social creatures. We become like the people we spend time with. If you want to develop consciousness, spend time with conscious people. Here's the choice before you. Gurdjieff taught that humanity stands at a crossroads. We can continue evolving towards greater consciousness and freedom, or we can become more sophisticated machines, more comfortable slaves to our own unconsciousness. This choice is individual, but the consequences, those consequences are collective. Your personal awakening matters more than you might imagine, not just for your own life, but for the future of human consciousness itself. Every moment you choose awareness over automatic reactions, every time you respond from wisdom rather than mechanical reaction, you're contributing to the possibility of a more conscious world. The tools are available. The understanding is clearer than ever. The only question remaining is whether you have the courage, believe that you have the willpower, and confidence in yourself to begin this most important work of becoming who you actually are beneath all the conditioning, beneath all the automatic patterns, beneath all the borrowed thoughts and feelings. The real you is waiting to be discovered, but like Beelzebub's journey from exile back to the center, it requires genuine work, conscious effort to see things as they actually are rather than as you wish they were. Are you ready to wake up from the waking sleep that most people call normal life? Are you ready to stop being a sophisticated biological machine and become a genuine human being? Choice is yours, but the time to choose is now. I'm Mark Roach, wishing you all the best.